Hello everyone, this is Diane. I have these journals all done and ready to be listed in my shop. I've been working very hard to get them done. There's a lot of detail, lots of pockets, lots of inserts in the pockets, and also I've been working hard at getting another, 3 sets of digitals in my shop so I can have these in at the same time as I put the books in. So let me show you the digitals first. There are 3 sets. There are 5 pages in each set, and they are the vintage book covers and some of the images from these vintage books. I mentioned that I was thinking about putting these in as a digital, and some of you were interested, so here they are. So these are 2 covers of the books that I am doing. This is set number 1 right here, volume 1. So these are book covers that I just made journals with. The third book will be in a different volume of digitals. Here's another book. I haven't made a journal with that yet, but it's a sweet cover. Ethel Morton at Sweet Briar Lodge, and this is one of the illustrations. And with this one you get the spine that is still attached to my book, so it ended up in there, and you can cut that out and make it a bookmark. Then we have some illustrations from this little book. It's called Why I Love You. It was just a little gift book, very, very thin, but it had some beautiful pictures and poems. So this is the cover, and this is one of the spreads in the book. And this is another of the spreads with a poem. And another one. These are such pretty illustrations, and I love the paintings. All right, so that's volume 1. Volume 2 has some illustrations. Some of these are Harrison Fisher. These are both Will Grief, and they came from this book, which is called A Million a Minute, and I haven't made a journal with that one yet. And this is an adorable book cover called The Bonnie Jean, the Dolphin series. I don't know anything about that, but it's a really sweet cover. And then these 2 illustrations are from a different book that I have the cover in this set also. Some children helping out with household chores. So it's called Brother and Sister Keep House. And there's 2 more illustrations. You can tell this is from the, either 20s or 30s. I think it's from the 20s. And then we have 2 more book covers, Is It True? And Alwyn's Friends, with another spine that can be used as a bookmark. And another set of covers, Barriers Burned Away, and Betty of the Rectory. Same author for these 2 books, L.T. Mead, and there's a bookmark spine there. You could take these book covers, glue them to cardstock, or glue them to a hardcover book and make a journal with using these as the covers. You could just use them as a journaling card or as a page in your journal. There's lots of things you can do with these. And then the third set, this is the book A Million a Minute. You saw an illustration from that book in the previous set in volume 2, I believe. This is actually the dust jacket from the book. I trimmed off the rough, because it was kind of tattered. I trimmed off those edges and scanned it. But the hardcover book also has this image on it, this cover. So I'm looking forward to making a book out of that. And this illustration is from that book. 2 more books, Cowardice Court and The English Orphans. Look at how beautiful that cover is. And 2 more covers. This is the 3rd journal that I'm going to show you. I made a journal out of that. And then we have Bashful 15 by Mrs. L.T. Mead again. Didn't even realize that. And then we have some illustrations from the various books. This is from Half a Rogue, which is a book that I just made a journal from. And this is a Harrison Fisher illustration, as is this one. And then we have 2 illustrations up here. Looks like his head got chopped off, but that's how the illustration was in the book. Here's some more Harrison Fisher. I believe all of these are, nope, this one is Grief, G-R-E-F-E. These 2 are Harrison Fisher. So there's some lovely images there that you can play with, and they are all in my shop. So now let's look at the books. Let's start with Half a Rogue. This book is called Patty in the listing because her name is Patty. One of the illustrations had her name. I wiped off the covers of all of these, but they still look vintage, which is a good thing, right? I added metal book corners to all of the books, and this was raw down here and here where the fabric had torn off, so I covered it with this piece of vintage fabric. And I covered the spine with this pretty fabric and just added some lace. This is not vintage, but this is vintage. There are 3 signatures. I'll have to count the pages. I took the spine of this, the real spine, and made it into a bookmark. I just glued it to coffee dyed paper and added, punched a hole and added the reinforcement. I'll tie some fibers through that before I send it out. I'm using 2 kits, actually 3. The 2 are from Nectar's Creations, and they're Cottage Lane Volume 1 and Volume 2. So I got both of the sets, and I used them all in these journals. There are 3 pages of ephemera with each of the sets of digitals. So I printed 3 sets of ephemera. So I printed the one that came with each set once, and then I printed one a second time. So I'd have enough ephemera to go through all 3 books. And still I added more ephemera from what I already had printed in my stash, or not even just printed, just things I had in my stash. I'll show you. So this is part of the ephemera. I cut that out and just glued it there, and it's called Cottage Lane, so it does have some cottages in the digital. I'm going to drink some water. So each book gets at least one of the original illustrations. I scanned this in. Obviously this goes with this book. Patty Bennington is her name. This is Harrison Fisher, illustrator. And I scanned this in, and it is in one of the digital kits. So you get the book cover in one kit and this illustration in another kit. I just glued it to some lined paper. This is part of the digital kit. There will be lots of pockets made with wide pieces of lace, and I did a video showing putting some of those in. This was a piece of wide eyelet, and it had a jagged edge where it would have been sewn into something. So I covered it with this really pretty piece of ribbon, and then just added these little rosettes for decoration. I did some stenciling on the white backs of the pages. This is a Tim Holtz ephemera piece, one of the cardstock ones, and I think this is a digital. But I glued them together and then glued them on as a tuck spot. And here's one of the little journaling cards with a cottage on it. There are cottages and flowers and butterflies and these colors in the kit. Oh, I didn't tell you what the third kit was. It's Mrs. Coggs Sunday magazine covers, I think is the name of the kit, and they're some of the they're journaling cards. So I'll show you where they are. This is coffee dyed paper with some peach colored lace on it because peach is one of the dominant colors in the kit. Oh, there's another kit that I used. It is TlcCreatesVintage, and it is something book pages. I don't know if it's old book pages or vintage book pages, but she did a different treatment with the same kind of yellowy gold color. on all the pages. This little butterfly is a fussy cut from the kit. This is a repair tag. It had a perforated part and I tore that off and just glued this on as a tuck spot, added a piece of doily and this little metal charm that was, it's not really metal, it's digital, it's from this kit. Here's a journal card from the kit. I did a lot of inking on journals, cards and stuff like that. And this is from Tailor Made Journals. I had printed my pages on the backs of coffee dyed and avocado dyed doily digital papers. Too many words. But you've seen those in recent books that I've done. I had a whole stack of pages that I had printed with these doily designs, and then I've been printing my digis for journals on those. Here's one of the Mrs. Coggs Sunday Magazine cover images. This is a piece of scrapbook paper, coffee dyed, that was a cutoff from a previous journal. So you'll see several of these in each book. I just cut it to the right width and then folded it down so you get the reverse side, which is coffee dyed. And I zigzag stitched all around it, and then I sewed it on as a pocket. And it's just got some little ephemera pieces sewn onto it. Little piece of ledger, really pretty piece of music paper, and I have a coffee dyed lace trim here, crochet trim, and a pretty green ribbon sewn there. And this is a pocket made out of tracing paper that I coffee dyed. Again, I folded it in half, doubled it, and then I just sewed here for decorative purposes and also to kind of hold it together so it's not all bubbly. And then I sewed it on as a pocket. Before I sewed it on as a pocket, I sewed a little card on that you can tuck things in. I tucked a little vintage ticket in it. And you could write on there, stamp, glue something there, whatever you want to do. Each journal gets one of my antique rose postcards. The rose postcards are digitals in my shop. So I just included one of the originals in each of these books. Here's one of the decorated pages from the Cottage Lane book, and there's a spot for journaling on it. Vintage stationery here. Coffee dyed paper with a stamp on it. There's a page from a Kate Greenaway book, The Language of Flowers, in each signature. And there's an envelope in the middle of each signature. I didn't put anything in the envelope because there's so much ephemera in here from all the pockets and tuck spots that I added, but you can put something in there to save. There's a Mrs. Coggs image that I used as a collage element. I don't remember if this was from the Sunday magazine. If it was, I trimmed off. I know that I cut off the title on one of the cards. I don't remember if that's it or if it just came from a different set. There's some vintage crochet trim sewn on that page, some stamping there. This is a vintage piece. It was almost cracked in half, like ready to fall apart. So I glued it to a piece of ivory cardstock. You can see this little chip in it, so you can see the cardstock behind that. It says Sabbath Schools supplied with everything they need. Presbyterian Board of Publication, Philadelphia. I don't know how old that is. I don't even remember where I got it. But I wanted to use some vintage ephemera in here, so you got the vintage postcard and some vintage pieces added in. There's a printable label that I just glued up there, and this is a tag from the kit. Isn't that a pretty kit? So I used peaches and greens and a little bit of yellow or ivory to kind of decorate the book to go with these colors. There's the other side of the music page, and I made a little pocket again with a cut-off piece of patterned cardstock, and this is the image that I had to cut the title off. I had to cut this one down to fit on. And then there's just a little scrap from a vintage ledger that's handwriting back there, and a scrap of my coffee dyed tracing paper. This is from the kit. Ledger paper here. Little collage up there with one of my stamped definitions. It says create. And I glued this on so you can write on it, and then just added a little fabric cluster. I didn't realize I had two of them so close together there. And here's the other side of that lace pocket. This one is an envelope. I didn't put anything in that one either, but it's from the kit. So now I think we can go a little more quickly through the rest of the signatures and the rest of the books. So here is a piece of lace that I sewed to a piece of yellow cardstock and then sewed it on as a pocket, and it wraps around. I sewed it on the whole width of the page and then folded it. Here's a Mrs. Coggs image. And again, a Tim Holtz flower, and this is just a little tag that I had. That's one of TaylorMade Journal's doily papers, digitals. Again, you will see fabric collages, fabric clusters with definition banners that I stamped. I added some of the dyed seam binding that I found at a flea market a week or so ago, and the seam binding you will find in my shop also. I will link my shop below. This is a very delicate and gorgeous vintage lace, and I put this green, mint green ribbon behind it and sewed it on so you can see it through the lace. Again, a tracing paper pocket. This pocket holds one of the Tim Holtz cards, photograph cards. You could glue plain paper to the back and journal, glue a picture of your own on there, whatever you want to do. There's a little tag here as a little tuck spot with a ticket inside. Love these images. This is another piece of vintage stationery. It has embossed daisies on it. The stationery will be the same in all three books. Kate Greenaway page and another empty pocket that you can put something in with a collage on the back. So these images weren't from the pocket images, envelope images, were not from the Sunday magazine kit. They were pieces that I had left over from other kits that I'm trying to use up. So there's a collage here with little bits of doily. This is from a collage sheet, and this is a negative from where I had cut some flowers out with my Big Shot machine. And this is a tally card. So you can open that up and write on it, glue something in there, but it's open as a tuck spot, and it just has a couple of digital cards in there. Those were some of the extras that I added that aren't part of the kit, and so is this. This is not part of the kit. This is from the Sunday magazine, and I think I had to cut the top of that one. But there's the vintage ledger and tracing paper. I used some of that peach lace on this pocket that I made with this coffee dyed scrapbook paper, and another little digital there. So, like I said, there's lots of detail, lots of pockets and tuck spots, a lot going on. There's another of the Tim Holtz cards. There's some of that dyed seam binding. And then the last signature has this sheer lace, which is so gorgeous. And this is another of the original illustrations. I think this is from Half a Rogue from this book, and it's a color illustration by Harrison Fisher. This one has cream lace on the edge. Little fabric cluster. Tag in there. And this is the pocket I made with the napkin. It was sturdier than a napkin. It was made to wrap around a glass of iced tea or something. And they were fancy. They were probably for a bridge party or something. It says made in England. I cut it in half and I made it into a pocket. So this side of the page gets one and the other side of the page gets the other half. This is the vintage stationery that's in this journal, or in this signature, and it just has a scalloped edge, just cream colored paper. And here's another piece of vintage ephemera. Central Canadian Exhibition, Ottawa in Ontario. It's some sort of a ticket. August 23rd to 28th, 1948. Love the numbers right here. I don't know where I got that. Might have been in a Happy Mail. Sometimes I pick up things on the tables at the flea markets that are just loose pieces of ephemera, and I just gather what I like and they tell me what price, and usually it's really cheap. Sometimes it's not, and I put them back. But if they're just laying loose on the table or in a box, I know that they're not going to be very expensive. Here's the other side of that glass wrap. And this was from, I don't remember. I guess that was a printable. I don't remember where it came from. I've had it in my stash, but I glued it to some coffee dyed paper. And I got some glue right here. And it didn't look awful, but I didn't like it. So this is a piece of the digital kit that I hadn't used because it's quite big for these little pages. So I just glued it there, covered up that glue spot. And I will probably tie some seam binding or something around these journals because they're already a little bit fat, and then you're going to want to add things to them. So I will tie them for you. So let's try to go through the other ones more quickly. This one has a flat spine that I had to create with chipboard because the spine was falling off it. So that gets the Bookmark Spine. They all have a different type of spine. So this one, I kept the spine as it was. And I made this a hidden spine, so you couldn't see the stitches. And then I went and covered it anyway, where the stitches would have been. So you don't even know that it's a hidden spine, but now you do because I told you. This one did have visible stitches, and I covered them. But it's got the original spine, which I reinforced with chipboard, Tyvek, and then covered it with fabric on the inside. And I just added a row of rosettes here to dress the cover up a little. This is a beautiful cover. I paid quite a bit for this book, more than I normally do. But it's because I love the cover, and it had Harrison Fisher illustrations. So there's some book corners on it. It's pretty basic. For this is one of the die cuts, or not die cuts, fussy cuts from the kit. I turned it sideways and punched this oval out of coffee dyed paper and stamped memories on it. And this book spine is part of the kit, the digital kit, Cottage Lane. So I turned that into a bookmark. Did I say it's a book spine? I turned it into a bookmark. And the name of the book is Cottage Lane. So I wonder if that's where, if she had this old book spine and got the name of the kit from that. Just glued it to coffee dyed paper, or yeah. And again, I will add a fiber to it. So here's one of the illustrations by Harrison Fisher. Grace Vernon. So I think it came from the, yeah, I'm pretty sure it came from this book. And this is the frontispiece from the book. It says 1905. Oh, it says George Bar McCutcheon, author of Beverly of Graustark, and I'm pretty sure I made a journal out of that book. And Brewster's Millions. That sounds like a movie. Was there a movie called Brewster's Millions? I didn't glue this to anything because I wanted you to see the copyright here, 1905. So now we'll just go through the book. It's got the same setup, same laces and everything. This came from a book. I just glued it to copy dyed paper. For this, I had these digitals. I've had them for a long time. Don't know where I got them from. I never put them in a book or anything. So I thought, well, I'll put the June one in because I'm making this journal in June. And then I figured I would add July and August, so whoever gets this book can do what they want with these tags. You can put them in a different book if you want to. So this is the bottom part of that repair tag that is perforated, and I tore it off to make the little tuck spots. You saw them. So that's the bottom part of one of them. This is a little card. I believe this is a reproduction. I don't think it's very vintage. A pocket from, or an envelope from the kit. Nothing in it. I love this image. This is part of the digital kit from Mrs. Coggs, the Sunday magazine. So apparently I cut off the title of more than I remembered doing. This is the vintage postcard in this book. And it's dated 1925. It's got writing on the back. Here's another Harrison Fisher illustration. Lady Tennis. And this is I think this might have been a Tim Holtz ephemera too, but I love it. It's a little hot. It's a little pink cottage, isn't it? In fact, well, it's kind of brown, but it looks pink. It's a pretty pink cottage. There's a tag from the kit. This is the vintage piece that I glued on as a tuck spot. It's a fan. It was split there so it could fold up and open, but I glued it, and then I glued it on as a tuck spot and put this little printable postcard in there. It's got a little eyelet down here. It probably had a tassel or something hanging from it. If I had thought, I would have done that before I glued it down. Put something there. This is from Somerset Studio magazine. They always have some pages in the centers of some of their publications, like 4 pages, I think, that you tear out. They're called artist papers, and they're heavier than their magazine paper. Maybe not quite cardstock, but they're heavier than magazine paper. So sometimes they're cut apart things instead of a whole sheet. So this is one of the cut aparts. It had part of the word. It does have writing on the back of those, and it just had a little bit of a word there, so I put part of a stamped label there, and I believe it's in this book. There will be another piece from that magazine. This one has a pretty piece of white and peach lace there. I just had that little piece left. This is from the music book, but it's a copy of the sheet music cover. I'm loving you. I'm longing for you every day. And there's the tracing paper pocket, the vintage ticket in there. You see the cottage on that. Very pretty. This was just a scrap of paper that I had from one of my vintage papers. It's from Towanda, Pennsylvania, 1930 something, from the Orphans Court, Deeds and Clerk of the Orphans Court. So Towanda is my county's, the county seat. So the courthouse is there, so I'm sure this came from that, from the courthouse. I love this image. And this is the other piece that I cut from the Stampington and Company artist papers, and I added a label there to cover up some of the writing. Okay, so that is Nedra. And then the last one is Marcia. And this book is called Marcia Drayton. I love this. She reminds me of, maybe she's a little Dutch girl, but she reminds me of a pilgrim. I didn't read any of the books, so I don't know. And the cover is pretty, or the spine. So I did a hollow back, hidden, rounded hollow back spine, so you can't see the stitching. And again, it's the same digital piece, and I turned it sideways and glued that on there. So in this one, you get the frontispiece that has the title with the subtitle, or Her Heart's First Choice. And the date is 1902. And I put this little piece in here too, where it was inscribed to someone, to Mama from Emmett, October 24th, 1913. But the book itself is from 1902. And again, we have the digital spine as a bookmark, and this came from a book. I just cut her out and glued her to some paper. I'll put these with this book. I finally used some of the black and white of the Tim Holtz ephemera flowers. I like them, but I never seemed to want the black and white with whatever I was doing, but I thought they looked nice with the colorful stenciling behind it. So there's butterflies from the kit that I fussy cut out in every journal. This one was a little to and from tag that came out of some book, and this is a piece of maybe Tim Holtz ephemera that was a little frame. It says Daisy Photo, so I just sewed it on over her face. And these are both ephemera pieces from the kit. And this is a vintage cigarette card. It has duckweed on it. Somebody sent that to me, I think. This is from a book of tatting, vintage book of tatting. This is a vintage piece. I don't know where it came from. And again, I don't know what it was cut from, because it was cut from something. I had to neaten it up a little bit. And I don't know if I picked it up at a flea market or if somebody sent it to me in a Happy Mail. But I thought it was really pretty, and the colors were great with this. This was just a leftover cardstock piece, and I added that ledger with the writing, vintage ledger, and this is a fussy cut flower. And here is a vintage card. I do believe somebody sent this to me, maybe, but I thought it was so cool, and you can write on it. There's a little fabric banner on this one. There's a Tim Holtz photo card and a book illustration. This is not vintage, but it is 3D. So I glued that on as a pocket. Somebody sent me a bunch of gorgeous 3D illustrations and ephemera pieces, and that looks perfect in here, I think. I love this little cluster. This is vintage. The rickrack piece, I don't know how old that is, and that is vintage. Here's another envelope. Put a stamp on that one. This is cut from a notepad and glued on there. I think there's one of these in each of the books. And this is just a scrap of coffee dyed paper for journaling. I was running out of things to tuck in the pockets. Love that with the cottage on there. Can you see it? Tim Holtz photo with a bride and a groom. And a book illustration. Harrison Fisher. Love that cottage. This was from another digital. Might have been from Ephemera's Vintage Garden. Not positive, but I think so. I've had this in my stash for a while. And this is a little envelope that I've had for a while. I had it in a different project, and I took the project apart. It was a mini album that I had made, and I've kept this little envelope with a little tag inside, and I thought the colors went well, so I stuck it in here. This is a leftover piece from a Bow Bunny paper that I had, and this is a vintage card depicting some characters from Gilbert and Sullivan's HMS Pinafore. So this is Josephine, the captain's daughter. So that's just something fun. I thought the colors went well with the book. And here is the vintage postcard. Dated 1909. It's addressed to little Dorothy Dimple. With love from Aunt Jenny, Miss Dorothy Osborne. Little Dorothy Dimple. And then the last Sunday Magazine image from Mrs. Cobb. So there we go. So we have the digital kits in my shop, and we have Marcia, Nedra, and Patty in my shop. I hope that you liked these books. These were really fun to make. I enjoyed them a lot. I'm really glad I got to use some of these old covers that I've been hoarding. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back again soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.